All right, welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shaunna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, we are deep, deep into July. Just, oh, I don't know
Yeah.
whether to be grateful or frustrated with 2025.
Well, yeah, we're on the
Ah.
we're on the downward slide now, right? So
We
month
are.
7. Yeah.
We are. I saw something that said we're now closer to 20,
Nope.
what is it?
Stop. Don't
25th.
say it. Don't say it. Nope. Not allowed.
I was like, oh my gosh, we are closer. Okay, let me stop it. Let me stop it. But yes, we are on the downswing. You're exactly right. But of course, we have lots to discuss. Of course, we find much more than we have time to talk about here, but we do have really great topics to pontificate about
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as we get into this second half of the year. But let me get us started, Dr. Lisa, with our
Mm-hmm.
word of the week, which is commodification. Commodification. Sounds like one of those words that you should spell at the National Spelling Bee, like,
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
you get the whole thing in there. Commodification. It is just like it sounds when we think about a commodity, the action or treatment of something like it's a commodity. Okay, so here we go with never define a word with the same word. So, what is a commodity? In fact, a commodity is it could be anything, raw materials or anything that's useful that can be bought or sold. And of course, when you hear the bought or sold piece of things, you think about all of this happening within an economic or
Mm-hmm.
capitalist setting. And when I started thinking about that, Lisa, when I think commodity initially, like my brain initially goes to food,
Mm-hmm.
supplies,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. But as we know, as women, as a person of color, as all these different groups, that unfortunately we, in fact, and our experiences and even property that belongs to us become
Yeah.
commodities that
Yeah.
can be bought or sold. And so we may touch upon this later. Y'all know we pick a word of the week. It may or may not connect with the phases that we talk about later, but just think about things that may in fact be commodified that maybe just shouldn't be commodified. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we can go down a laundry list, but just get your wheels turning around things that you want to sell versus things you don't want to sell. Like, Lisa, I remember when this person that thinks he's the king of the United States was literally, quote unquote, selling Bibles with his name on them. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, as a person of faith, specifically as a Christian, but just go with any person of faith, of course, you can acquire a holy writ. You can acquire certain books. You can acquire these things. But it becomes commodification when you emboss your name on it, you autograph it like you wrote the damn thing. Now we're going into commodification, the buying and selling of something in a way that only benefits one person in that particular case. So that was one of the first things I thought of when I thought
Mm.
about commodification of something that probably should not be commodified. Not a perfect example, but certainly one that we've seen recently. And so I'm sure that now we can't unsee it, Lisa. Now that we've explained it to our listeners, hopefully they
Yeah.
can't unsee it now that they see it around them. So yeah,
I
commodification.
mean, we talk about exploitation, and I think commodifying something that isn't really a product to be bought or sold is a piece of that exploitation. And then when it's humans or living
Mm-hmm.
things, I guess, then it enables dehumanization. The Bible
Mm-hmm.
piece, the Bible example, I think it's not the Bible that's been commodified. I think it is people's religious or faith commitment that's been commodified, right? Like it's the opportunity within a
Mm-hmm.
capitalist system to make money off of Shaunna's faith and support of this person by pulling the two together and then commodifying that. And the vehicle is a Bible. because you can buy a Bible, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's where I think commodification and exploitation come pretty close hand in hand
Mm-hmm.
concepts. Yeah.
I think as soon as you said that, my brain went to the visual of a tree where commodification is just one branch on this larger tree of
Mm-hmm.
all the different types of
Yeah.
exploitation. It's just one
Yeah.
of many, y'all, that we could talk about. But yeah, you're right on it. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so take us into phase one, Dr. Lisa.
Okay. So y'all may have figured out, if not, you're learning now that I do read the New York Times. Sometimes I am regretful of that choice, and other times I think they have pretty good journalism. I do think it depends on the journalist, and some of their editorial choices they make are questionable. However, on the whole, they do have some good stuff. And they wrote a piece recently about the Jonestown Massacre, the site of the People's Temple, where Jim Jones, who was a cult leader back in the late 1970s, actually a little bit before I was born, ordered his followers to die by suicide, and some 900 people died there in Guyana. And there is a tour group or organization business that has opened up this site to tourism for people to visit. And I have some feelings about it. Since this is, live and unedited, I need a drink because I'm about to cough and I don't want to do that into the microphone. Hang tight.
Hey, sip away.
So the country Guyana is pretty small. And there is a lot of shame and embarrassment around what happened there back in the 70s. And so there's a large contingent of folks who are really not interested in turning the spotlight back onto this place, right, where this happened. And so what the thing that's kind of been banging around in my head about it, to use the word of the week, is what does it mean to open a site of violence, massacre, genocide, pain, trauma, to tourism, right? To tourists. I mean, there are a number of sites around the world. I'm thinking about the killing fields in Cambodia. I'm thinking about sites of Holocaust Nazi concentration camps in the Holocaust in Poland and in Austria and in Germany, right, where people can visit plantations in the United States,
I was
right?
about to say Nottoway Plantation. We could talk
Yep.
about the door of no return. So many.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and they, in it, like this newly opened site down in Jonestown, um, it it enables two things, right? One, it creates memory, public memory, and educates people as to these really negative and disruptive and painful and violent chapters in various countries' histories, so that doesn't get forgotten, right? And I think it can be done well. I think it can be done respectfully. But the other piece of it is this idea that it's commodifying trauma and violence, right? Someone is making money off of this heinous kind of stain on a country's or a family's or, a city's history. And that's where the argument is sitting with this Jonestown massacre site in Guyana is it truth telling? Is it memorializing and ensuring that people don't forget this so that we can learn? Or is it exploitation? Is it disrespectful? Is it commodification? And so I'm curious about your thoughts there. And I want to throw one other thing in here. So, in addition to thinking about that, we are at a point now in 2025 where the National Park Service has been directed by both an executive order and a follow-up order from the Secretary of the Interior that we are needing to restore, quote unquote, truth and sanity to American history. And one of the ways that this is happening is that the National Park Service and National Historic Sites are required to post a sign with a QR code that enables visitors to let the National Park Service know if they have identified, and I'm quoting here from the sign, any signs or other information that are negative about either past or living Americans or that fail to emphasize the beauty, grandeur, and abundance of landscapes and other natural features. So it's essentially encouraging the public to root out and complain about any historic sites that have information that would be perceived as quote unquote negative about past or living Americans, right? And there's two sites that are in Colorado. One is a formerly Japanese internment camp, right? FDR signed that executive order interning Japanese Americans. And the other is the Sand Creek Massacre site, where hundreds and hundreds in the 1860s of Cheyenne and Arapaho people, men, women, and children, were massacred, right? And Colorado's gone through a journey with that latter one, with the Sand Creek Massacre, in terms of really kind of understanding it and atoning for that.
Yeah.
And these signs are at both of those sites. So how do you tell a story of history, of violence, of trauma, of genocide in a positive light, right? And then what does it mean to open those sites up to the public? That is my question to you, Shaunna, because I've been chewing on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, y'all know I'm from Virginia, so I'm not afraid of these conversations at all.
Right, right.
I mean, while teaching and working at University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, Virginia, they're still at that time. I don't know if it's still there or not, but at that time, which was up to what 2007, still had a slave auction block on the corner of a park. So, I'm not afraid to have these conversations here. I think there's so much that irritates me about this, but the main thing that irritates me about this in particular is that the language that takes us to a binary way of thinking.
Right.
Negative or positive, good or bad. When to me, all I hear is white comfort or white discomfort when I hear positive or negative. Positive is all the white folks are comfortable with the story. Negative story or negative history is white folks are uncomfortable with the story. And so we have to make these determinations and scan QR codes. And all I could hear in my brain, Lisa, as you were sharing the actual language, was snitches get stitches at this point. It's like snitches, people are set up to snitch on folks that are trying to tell a fuller history that doesn't need to have the label of negative, positive, beautiful, ugly. It doesn't have to have that binary. It is what it is, because I've been asking that question for years as an African American in this country. White comfort requires African Americans to either tell the story of slavery, which has no comfort in it.
Right, right.
Or not tell it at all. And usually it's the not tell it at all part. So how is it that kids like me back in the day could be born, raised, educated, sent off to college in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where tons of actual battles occurred connected to the Civil War, and nobody spelled it out expressly of what the Civil War was really about?
Right.
How the hell does that happen? It happens by design. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
So with that, this still circles around white comfort. And so now going to the commodification piece of things. And y'all, if you haven't read, seen, heard about the Jonestown Massacre, 900 folks. This was, I was only a few months old when this happened. So when I asked my parents about this many, many moons ago, when I was studying about it in, Lisa, I actually learned about the Jonestown massacres when I was studying in seminary about cult movements.
Okay.
That's when I originally learned about it.
Hmm.
So to me, that was interesting. But as I asked my parents about it, they said, "Oh yeah, you were just a few months old because I was sitting, I was sitting in the living room holding you, giving you a bottle, and the news came up." I'm like, "Oh my word!" So that's how relatively recent all of this is. That's the first piece. And going back to our previous conversations about plantations and the Nottoway plantation versus the Whitley plantation, for example, it's up to the Guyanese people as to what they would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I want to put a little asterisk and make an argument in smaller font underneath the Guyanese people can do what they want to do. My smaller font underneath of that is if you're going to do it, there is a way to do it and there is a way not to do it. And my
Okay.
overwhelming fear, very similar to what we've talked about in regards to the Nottoway plantation, even connected to what we've talked about with book banning, what we've talked about with censorship, is how can we ensure that the story doesn't get lost, whitewashed, removed, overlaid with Christian privilege. My fear is that the story will go away and then there is no story. And as we know,
Right. Right.
we are bound to repeat history that we're not aware of. And so, given that, that is my bigger fear is, hey, I'm going to follow the Guyanese lead. And at the same time, would not telling the story be somewhat dangerous or just as dangerous as telling the story badly?
Yeah, I mean it's tough, right? Because
I don't know.
everyone, I mean, a lot of people know about Jonestown, but being able to visit the site, and I guess there is a plaque there or some kind of memorial that was put up in the 2000s, early 2000s, but
Mm-hmm.
charging
Mm-hmm.
people to take them there, I guess it's not that easy to get to. That's the piece, I think, in addition to folks just wanting to forget it because they feel like it's a stain on their country. And so,
Mm-hmm.
that same argument, I guess, is is loosely true for the restoring sanity to American history, right? We don't want this
Mm-hmm.
stuff or people to be reminded of this stuff because it's a stain on American history. I mean, I don't agree with that at all, but there was a book I read several years ago. It's called How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. And
Mm-hmm.
each
Mm-hmm.
chapter, he visits a historic site in the United States. And one of them is Thomas
Ooh.
Jefferson, so Monticello, right?
Oh, yes.
And
Uh-huh.
he engages with people there, right?
Yeah.
And talks about why they came and what their experience is and did they know the history prior to coming there and stuff like that. It's really interesting. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
he talks to the couple, this two white women who are there who didn't know. They're older white women, so I think they were at least in their 50s. They didn't know that Thomas Jefferson had enslaved people. They didn't know
Mm-hmm.
anything about that, and they learned it
Mm-hmm.
at Monticello, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
they were lamenting with him about how it was possible for them to have gone that far in their lives
There
and
you
not
go.
that.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
so
Yes.
Clint Smith is an African American man, and so all of the chapters are sites that have connections to racial oppression and the United
Mm-hmm.
States history of enslavement specifically. And so I think about that, and then I think about this executive order, and then these signs at the National Park Service, because presumably Monticello is a National Park Service location, and like
Yes, it
how,
is. Mm-hmm.
so how we're going. In some cases, this information is going to get erased, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
um, so to your point, to not tell it versus to tell it badly, um,
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Yeah.
I would choose to tell it badly, like rather than not tell it, right? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and what does so let's go with Monticello. Let's go with the example that you just gave. Um, again, native Virginian. Monticello is in Charlottesville, Virginia, less than an hour away from where I grew up, where my parents were.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a thing you do when you're a kid growing up in Virginia. You go to Monticello, right? And the evolution of telling that story at Monticello is quite fascinating because after further research, publications, discovery around Thomas Jefferson's, I want to say statutory rape, but Thomas Jefferson's relationship with Sally Hemings, again, forcing one's hand to continue to tell a fuller story, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you learn more, you tell more. And so with that, the language has changed over time at Monticello. I watched it was
Yeah.
I'll have to find it, the National Geographic documentary on those changes at Monticello, the changes in, do we mention African descendants there at all? Okay, well, now that we do, we're calling them slaves. Okay, well, that's uncomfortable or that's inappropriate. Can we say enslaved? Can we say servant? Can we say, and so that language evolved over
Mm-hmm.
time. So I would suggest that, they started out with that story not being told at all. Then it moved to being told badly. And now it's being told better and better as the years go on, more
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
over time. And so Monticello would be a great example of starting bad. Look, continuous improvement right here. Okay. I mean, they're just going through this
Mm-hmm.
arc of change. And part of it is informed by historians that do a really great job of filling in the information that we didn't know before. And also part of it is led by the individuals that are directly affected. So, for example, with Monticello, yes, descendants of Jefferson, descendants of Sally Hemings and her siblings, more than one was enslaved at Monticello. They get to now guide how Monticello tells their story, right? Well, what would that also look like with this particular situation where if there are families, and I know they're not all going to agree because look how large the massacre was. I mean, 900 people, times the families and extended family. They're not even always going to agree on how the story is told too, but as us looking from the outside in as kind of armchair critics, I would feel more comfortable with the Guyanese and the families collaborating in some way to tell the story that they feel most comfortable with. Let them make that decision because they're the ones being centered. I mean, for some families, it might be a point of shame to say that, oh, I had a family member affiliated with this man, this family, this group. There might be other people that say, no, I'm not ashamed. And I really think it's an important part of history. So maybe, we can improve moving forward. Maybe this can be part of history training for people who are
Mm-hmm.
leaders of groups, major organizations. So I can see both sides of the coin, but how do we center the people that are most affected? And even for example, what would in fact backlash look like with the Guyanese people that are still in the surrounding area? Do they want to invite that in or not? That's a determination that they have to think about. But my fear at this point, my bigger fear than all of that is truly the silence.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
women that you mentioned at Monticello that knew nothing about certain things. That is by design. It's by design for us to quote unquote not know certain things. It's by
Yeah.
design.
Yeah, and we're definitely backtracking there, obviously. And so just to wrap up this phase,
Yeah.
one of the things that I had read when I was reading about these National Park Service QR codes and such is that a form of resistance that we can actively participate in is you scan that damn QR code and you write in your comments about how important it is that history is told
That part.
fully and all of it, the good, the bad, the
Mhm.
ugly,
That's right.
because
That's right.
and that is valuable. And as an American citizen, as a tourist to this country, whatever your role is, right, you just bombard that QR code with feedback to underscore the importance that we are truth telling, that we cannot
Truth
shy
telling.
away. Because at Monticello, I could absolutely see that being whitewashed, right? Sand Creek
Hmm.
Massacre and a Japanese internment camp, like then
Hmm.
there's no history to tell, right? What are you going to say?
Right, right.
Japanese people elected to come to an internment camp to have like an extended summer camp. Like it's just like not even real, right? So I think that we just need to, part of your resistance perhaps to this
Oh,
ridiculousness
well, but what you just
is to
said
bring that
scares
forth.
me. I
Yeah.
know I'm going to try not to backtrack. I'm just pointing out that that scares me only because I have heard stories similarly about the Atlantic slave trade that were not the Atlantic slave trade. They
Mm.
were Africans decided that they wanted to get on a ship and come to the United States like it was a daggone carnival cruise.
Yeah, like an employment fair or something, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll leave that there. But I think it's worthy of the conversation, especially given how much you and I don't agree with the silence, because we know silence
Yeah.
breeds ignorance and ignorance breeds more of the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah. All right, well, let's get into phase two. All right, so Lisa, I don't know which one is more prevalent, our semi-addiction to podcast or our my semi-addiction to documentaries, because yeah, I know it's bad. It's bad. I mean, a couple weekends ago I watched the Surviving Ohio State about that whole thing. This weekend, most recently, I watched another one that I wanted to share with Dr. Lisa and you all. And it's called Deaf President Now, and it dropped on Apple TV Plus back in May of 2025, and I didn't know that until more recently when I was just scrolling through. And what was so interesting, so a few things that connected me with this. The first thing is I'm here in the DMV area, and Gallaudet University is right in Washington, D.C., established through an act of Congress by President Abraham Lincoln to be the first university, and I believe still only university in the world that has deaf, blind, and forgive me for this language, at the time it was deaf, blind, and dumb students at the time. And so given that, the first for deaf students, and there was a wave of protesting in 1988. I sat down and watched this movie, Lisa, and the movie was, a full length movie, a little short of 2 hours. And all this was happening. It was so much that was happening that I'm thinking this happened over months of time. No, these protests happened within a week to 10 days time on this campus in 1988, right? So,
Interesting.
I
Okay.
mean, it was a lot going on. And so let me tell you what happened. So it's time for a new president, all right, at Gallaudet University. And they have three final candidates. Lisa, I don't know if you've ever served I know you've served on search committees in higher ed, but a presidential search committee is a whole
Nope.
new level. Presidential search committee, I've been on one before, only one. And it is a long drawn out process until you get to your shorter list. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
7 to 10 people. And then you finally get down to your top 3 to 4. Gallaudet gets down to their top three that they're considering. And that's when oftentimes the top three goes public. Before they make a decision, they have permission from the candidates that the university can go public and share the three profiles. And usually that's also the time when students, faculty, staff, alumni can get involved with hearing them, do a presentation, interview, etc. The top three, one was a white woman, a white hearing woman. The other two were white men, but they were both part of the deaf community. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening. I'm watching now, Lisa. You and I, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is literally stitched into our DNA. It had not registered in my brain yet, even with the title of the movie. It didn't register in my brain yet that one of these three people, yes, was going to be the president, but up to this point of these top three, they had never had a deaf president in the 122-year history of Gallaudet University.
Yeah, that's
Not
mind
one.
blowing. I would never have guessed that either. I would have been like, that would have been like number one priority for this school would be to have a deaf
Right.
president. Yeah.
Right. And so as I'm getting into the, first 30 minutes of the movie, I'm thinking to myself, okay, there must be some controversy amongst the top three candidates, but I'm assuming one or all of them are deaf or
Mm-hmm.
partially hearing or hard of hearing, part of the deaf community. So it's not even crossing my mind until this woman comes up here and she starts talking. She's not signing. She doesn't understand whether other people are signing to her. I'm like, oh my God, this is a hearing woman that's in the top
Mm-hmm.
three, and they choose her as the next president of Gallaudet University. All right, here goes my mind exploding again, Lisa, because I'm thinking to myself, yeah, similar to what a student said that was interviewed in the movie. Of course, I care about women's rights and women's equity. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, I care about race, all these other different identities, but deafness came first for this particular
Yeah.
student. And as I'm
Yeah.
thinking about that, I'm like, deafness should have been first, but here we are, 122 years later, right? So they bring up all this archival footage. What was interesting learning for me was learning about the ways in which they used assistive technology to resist and form. Because think about at
Mm.
that time, think about organizing an entire campus of students, Lisa, where most, if not any, can hear you at all. So you can't make announcements in the middle of the
Right.
quad to say, meet here, right? The other piece is that you're trying to interpret when everyone is signing at the same time, which is already difficult. Um, on top of that, um, how do you rally anyone together when you don't have social media? They're depending on TTY and word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like, Lisa, you and I are the leaders of the protest, and all we do is drop one post on Twitter and 3,000 students show up. It's not that simple. Hearing or not, it's not that simple. And so the person that I know you're going to love, I'm not going to give all of it, but Lisa, if you ever get around to watching this documentary, Jane Bassett Spillman is going to be the person you want to reach through the TV and just slap. I mean, she's the stereotype of the Southern belle with the blonde hair, the big coiffed blonde curly hair.
I mean, it was
And
1988, so.
I know. Give her a little bit of credit. Yes. And so she shows up with all this, with her bright red lipstick. They would call her the Admiral because she would show up in a very militant suit and
Mm.
attired. But at that time, for women, some of that was done to be taken seriously amongst the men.
Oh,
So
for
I'm like,
sure.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm on the fence. Anyway, I'm comfortable with saying it. She was a straight up asshole. And let me tell you why she was a straight up
Mm.
asshole. She was an asshole because she doubled down on selecting the quote unquote best president for the role. And she resisted the students. She even came into a huge gym on campus to make some announcements I'm not going to share right now with the students. And I know tone deaf is a double entendre in this particular conversation, but this fits, Lisa. Go with me here, where she's making an announcement and students are starting to sign and speak and so forth. And she says, I could concentrate on what I'm saying better if it wasn't so loud in here. And the students are looking at her like, you dumbass, it's only loud for you. We're the ones that are deaf, and you are still functioning in a hearing environment. The rest of the
Mm.
outside world is the hearing environment. This is not a hearing environment. So you should get used to 3,000 students signing at you at the same time.
Right.
You not
Right.
being able to hear is not our problem or our priority, right? And so I was floored by the quality was fantastic with the film. I realized that, this month is Disability Pride Month. And so, of course, it's so fitting that this film just happened to pop up in my feed. But Lisa, I think the takeaway with the movie, without spoiling it, is don't underestimate the effectiveness of resistance. Small, large, mid-sized, whatever menu of resistance you choose, don't underestimate resistance,
Mm-hmm.
because I think what unfortunately happens is that I love how the students at Gallaudet were underestimated. They were underestimated
Oh,
because
for
up,
sure.
up to that point, not to say there wasn't any protest, but widespread protest to that degree, students were not as active and forceful with their resistance up until this particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
And they created not just one change, but a number of changes that you'll see. But just don't underestimate what it collectively can do. Even if you're only, especially if there's a student listening to this podcast, I don't care if your only job is to turn on the switch for the blinking lights to signal to all the students to go out to the quad to meet to talk about the issue. You have played your role as part of the resistance. Their job was to literally pull the fire alarm so that the lights would blink so everybody would get out and form a coalition
Mhm.
so that they could have conversation in a particular setting. Even that small flip of the switch or pulling of the alarm is part of the resistance. And so, in other words, get in where you fit in, y'all. Resistance can look a lot of different ways. And so the goal is of course to avoid doing nothing, Lisa. That's the biggest thing. Avoid doing nothing.
So this was 1988, and so they hired a
Mhm.
hearing woman. So did that woman take the presidency, or did they rethink?
Girl, she took the presidency, and what continues to, and I won't give you all the details on it, but yes, she did take the presidency for a period of time. And the frustration, which I now get, the frustration was not only was she not deaf, um, did not know one stitch of American Sign Language or any other sign language, and pledged that she was going to get a tutor to
Yeah.
help her to da 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 da. That's a second layer. The third layer, Lisa, was that I can't remember if she was an MD or MPH or something, but she was from the medical community as well, which for the deaf community, this is highly problematic because it also, even if it was only performative, it makes it seem as if we hired medical doctor Lisa Ingerfield to come cure us all of
Okay.
deafness.
Okay. Yeah.
Problematic. It reminds me of when I was working at a particular university and I had to kind of proverbially turn some tables over because I did not want them to place an LGBT center in the same building on the same floor as a health center because that could be seen as
Right.
pathologizing their lived
Right.
experience. It felt
Right.
very similar as I was watching that. And so, yeah, that was another layer that I can see why that was so sickening for those
Mm-hmm.
students. Um, because again, it was almost like let's fix deafness rather than welcome to our world, President. You have to get used to our world rather than us being fitted into yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit mind blowing to me. And you had shared about the board also, universities have
Mm-hmm.
boards and that there were mostly hearing people on the board. And that just blows me away in terms of
Yeah.
it feels very 2025 to have a board of a university be made up of
Uh,
people, a board of a
mm-hmm.
university that is designed specifically to support and educate the deaf community, to then have a
Mm-hmm.
board that is made up of not deaf people, and then a president who is also not deaf. But like, I know people who are hearing but whose parents are deaf, and so they've grown
Right.
up with American Sign Language, right? So then I'm
Right.
thinking, oh,
Right.
okay, so maybe this person wants to be president because they've grown up integrated into the deaf community, can sign fluently, right? But that wasn't
Mm.
it either. So it just seems, I mean, it just seems maddening. And talk about just a complete um, bypassing of what students and faculty want. And this kind of presumably, I'm guessing here, the belief of the board
Mm.
that we know what's best for
That's
the
it.
students, right?
That's it.
And none
That's
of the,
exactly
well,
right.
I think you had said one of the board members was hard of hearing, right? And so everyone
Mm-hmm.
else, like, we know what's best. So you don't really know what's good for you. So we're just going to give you
Mm-hmm.
this president who isn't deaf, has no connection to the deaf community, can't
None.
sign,
None. Mm-hmm.
right? And is from the
Mm-hmm.
medical community. But we think that's going to be best. So yeah, I mean, we've seen that with other marginalized groups, right? Where the dominant group decides what's best for them. So that's not new.
So the whole board basically at that point is functioning with savior complex. Let's save all
Yeah.
these little
Yeah.
deaf, blind, and literally from the language they used originally, deaf, blind, and dumb kids. Let's go save them and cure them and all these other pathologizing approaches to simply educating
Mm,
students at a university that was created for them, not to treat them.
right. Right.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. And so, I just think it was interesting with that. I think um, 5 people that you all should know about the Gallaudet Four: Jerry Covell, Brigetta Bourne Farrell, Tim Raris, and Greg Liebach were students at the time that were interviewed for this documentary and telling their
Mm-hmm.
stories. And so it was very interesting to see the differences across their personalities and even describing how their personalities of signing. So, for example, one of them mentioned that, oh, well, you're seen as shy as a deaf signing person if you only sign within your 18-inch block in front of you. But if you sign much larger, then you are seen as with a larger personality and more
Okay.
extroverted and outgoing. So these are things that I'm picking up on as someone from the outside looking in. So it was interesting to see the diversity across the Gallaudet Four. And then I. King Jordan, um, as a former dean of the university, being really a pivotal piece of the story. Um, Even watching him as a sitting dean develop and feel more sense of belonging as part of the deaf community, even as
Mm-hmm.
a grown adult that's in place to lead and educate students. It was just very fascinating, very
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. So I'd encourage y'all to take a look, put it on your playlist, because I think it was bookmarked so that I can go back, and I missed a couple of little parts in it. But I think what's really important is not underestimating what it means to have cumulative effect when there are small and large actions that are taken. Like, it was just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking I guess that's the cynicism in me, Lisa. I told you I'm the 40 plus Black woman now that's jaded on everything, right? So I'm watching the whole thing thinking, y'all done protested all over DC. You locked up the gates so people can't get in and out. You've done all this stuff. I have very little hope and faith that this board is going to do right. Well,
Mm-hmm.
some things actually went right. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised at the end. So it gave me a little more hope in the cumulative effects of the resistance.
Okay.
That's where I need to be. So if you need a little hope, that's it. Go get Apple
Go
TV
watch this
Plus and go
documentary.
watch.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was
Cumulative
incredible.
resistance. That's a really nice way to put it. That everything builds on what came before it. And even the
Hmm.
littlest of actions or moves can create a foundation for someone to step forward from. Right. So
Oh
I
yeah.
really like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, yeah. So there we have it. We gave y'all a little bit of what we're thinking about at this point. So that's a wrap. Please make sure that you follow us and reach out to us through all of your social media platforms. We're always at our email address, info@unfazedpodcast.com, or you can visit our website, unfazedpodcast.com, to access the old and the new shows. We are officially over the 200 mark, Lisa. We made it. We made it.
We
So,
made it.
check us out there. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So, Dr. Lisa, until next time.
All right. See you next time.